Reading this. Yes, we're recording, but know that your names will not show up on the recording. If you don't want your face to show up, you can keep your camera off. That's really up to you. But we will have a recording posted so that people can follow with us on their own time later if they want to. This session is being offered by the Inner Resilience Network. Jill Bistrova, who is here, and many others have kept this going since I think we started it in St. Paul when we had our first Inner Resilience meeting there. It's been a great community, and the various 10 a.m., well, I'm in Central Time, so wherever you are, whatever morning time this is for you, each morning there will be a session. This session I'm calling My Body on Our Earth. And I'm going to start. You're going to get to introduce yourselves in a little bit, but we're going to start. I'm going to read you a very short story. I am right now by a lake named Birch Lake in northern Minnesota. I'm admitting Angela. I am near this lake in northern Minnesota. The land is Anishinaabeg land. In a bit, I'm going to ask you to put into the chat, or I think we're few enough that you can say where you are and what a nearby non-human being is. Right out my window is a cedar tree among a great many white Norway pines. I'm going to read you a quick story. I took my children back to the lake. We pushed down a path to the place where a spring gushes out under cedars to send its water winding through mossy, mushroom-studded banks. We went to the V-shaped trough that channels that water over the logs, past rocks and eddying pools. My son pulled spruce twigs from young trees and set them into the flow. As their pitch reacted against the water, they spun like tiny mad boats toward the lake. He laughed and pulled down another pitch boat. Have any of you done that when you were children? If you take a little bit of a spruce and put it into the water, the tar comes out of it and it just goes wildly down. Let your kids do it if you haven't. Do it yourself if you never. But Josiah, I said, ask the tree. See if it wants so many boughs broken. Trees don't talk, said my son. Ask anyway, I told him. He turned to the tree. His lips moved. He looked back at me. It said okay, he assured me, and ripped off yet another twig. The next time he paused before reaching up. His lips moved again, and then he turned to me in dismay. Mom, he cried out, it said no. We walked to the end of the trough and watched the water spill into the lake. We're going to start from thinking about where we are, a non-human being that's close by, and then we're going to go back and remember those times when other beings spoke to us from in childhood. Sometimes I think children listen better than we adults, but we'll also let us as adults listen to what's out there. Because so many people are not on camera, I think it might be best if you put this into the chat and I will read where you are. I'll first ask if you want to say your own. Pamela, do you want to say where you're from?
Hello. I'll find me. Here I am. I'm from Columbia, South Carolina. I'm keeping the camera off because I'm in somewhat of a public space, but my closest non-living being at the moment is a peace plant. Excuse me, my first conversation that I remember with a non-human being actually is with the wind. So
hold that a bit, Pamela, and we're going to ask you to write
I'll
more
share
about
that.
it in a little bit. So there's the question, where are you coming in from? And what's right now your closest non-human neighbor? And I'm going to start just reading off, and we'll pause. If someone wants to say, they can. If not, and this is brief because you're going to get more time later. Suzanne Jones, do you want to say? Maybe not. Suzanne can jump in if she wants to. Liz.
I couldn't
Oh,
figure out
good.
how. That's okay. I couldn't figure out how to unmute. Yeah, I'm Suzanne Jones. I'm calling from Port Townsend, Washington, up near Seattle.
Oh, great. Let's go to Liz. She says she's from Goliad, Texas, with a cardinal and dove that visit. Thank you. Bethsaida. Bethsaida says she's from Hutchin, oh, Ohlone Territory, Oakland. Galen is from North Carolina. There's a fruit fly house guest. Yes, sometimes we have them. Jewel, do you want to say?
I'm in Paonia, Colorado, and my closest non-human, I honestly don't know. Probably a fly.
We'll let you check later. EP?
I'm in New Jersey, and I have one of those koi ponds in the backyard. But a few years back, we decided to just let everything go. So I just was out feeding the fish, and I saw the frog and the turtle. So we have frog and the turtles have moved in. So that's and there are neighbors too. We visit all the time.
Cool. Scott, are you there? Or he pointed out that he's got to do another thing at this time. There he is.
I'm here. I'm Scott, tuning in from Paonia, Colorado, also where Jewel is. And I happen to have a little digitalis plant right in front of me of the Pink Panther variety. The little
Cool
thing says. Happy to be here.
It's good to have you here. Eugene.
In Tamarack, Florida, a little bit west of Fort Lauderdale. In my living room, I've got a passion plant, which is growing quite passionately.
Nice. Tim.
I'm in St. Paul. I have I live in I'm in the living room that is under the limbs of the oak tree that leans over the house.
Yes, I'm lucky I know that oak tree. Francis.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm here from New Haven, Connecticut, and outside my kitchen window, I have a white oak tree that greets me every morning, and it has all its own inhabitants as well. But I live on the 4th floor of a building, and I'm just so happy that that tree is so nearby every day.
Wonderful. Thank you. Marilyn.
I'm in my kitchen, and I just made a batch of bread that I'm going to need while I'm listening to you. And I guess the yeast is live, but also here is a African violet that's on my windowsill.
Okay. Maria Renae.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm here in southern Arizona, and we have a lot of Gambel's quail families come and call right outside the window. So I'm always appreciating their like sweet and funny sounds.
Very nice. Let's see, Galen.
Yeah, I shared in the chat that talking to you from North Carolina, and my fruit fly house guest is the closest that I know of at the moment. And there's some very lovely birds that come and visit.
Cool. I don't know. Everybody jumps around, so I may have missed somebody, and there are some new people. We're just saying briefly where we're calling in from and the nearest non-human neighbor we have. Anybody who's just come in want to say? Or who I didn't call on?
I'm Kate,
Hi, Kate.
and I'm in Colorado. And I have 4 passionate pepper plants outside my front door that are producing lots of peppers. So
Very nice.
I'm happy to share them. I'm wishing I could, but I'll find someone.
But you've shared that they're there to us.
Okay.
Very nice. Yeah. Welcome, Theo and Rita. Theo, do you want to say where you're calling from and what your nearest non-human neighbor is?
Sure. I'm calling in from Manchester, Vermont. We have a transition town, Manchester, so we're the early ones to start. I have a frog living out by my front door. Kind of a great victory. I put an old fish tank in a place where the roof dropped water, and then built up like a frog access part of the garden. So he eventually hopped in. I'm so happy he's living there. So
cool.
Recommend that. Make a little frog territory where in your gardens, kids.
Great. Rita?
I'm Rita Varley, and I live in Philadelphia in a row house. And I really don't know what's the nearest neighbor. It might be a bug, probably, but and it could be a possum. I don't know if it's that possum's closer or the 2 wild cats that are out there that live outside. But the possum has a place right snugged up to the house where he sleeps in his bed of leaves, and yeah.
Yeah, cool. All right, I'm going to have us go on, and I'm going to read you another story. This is a quick one, too. Those of you who weren't here, I read a little story about my son when he was little, when I asked him to ask a spruce tree whether he could keep pulling off little bits of the tree and making them go spinning away as boats. And he didn't think it would talk. But the first time it said he could, and he did another one. The next time it said no. He was very surprised to get that no from a tree. But he did. And of course, I did that as a mother, but that doesn't mean that I'm always thinking that trees can talk. So this is a story from me years later. When I was in my initial severe climate distress. After Dad died, worried for children and alarmed for all life, I took myself to the woods. Winding through the scrub poplar and hazel brush, trekking past drying fern, up and down the slight rises, I followed a path made by deer. I walked near the hollow where I had visited a wolf-killed deer the winter before. Half a mile later, I arrived at the oldest white pine on this tract of land. It rose above the surrounding woods, nodding to the distant pines and the few tall spruce that stood out above the rest. I sat against it, my back leaning into its broad bark. It surprised me with movement. I looked up through the delicate lace of its needles, far to the blue sky above. There was wind moving it, coursing all the way down to the base, there where my back settled against it. I'm going to pause and give you a picture. There is a white pine. Relaxing into its sway, I prayed to the tree. Please, take care of my daughter. I did not expect a reply, did not think the tree could hear me, assumed I was merely wishing. But I heard a reply. The tree said, if you will take care of mine. Pine cones open only during fire, and I knew that no fires had been allowed in these woods for the past 45 years. Therefore, this tree could not have a daughter. I stood up, unnerved. I walked away from the tree, pushing further into the brush, and then I was pulled up short by a blur of white pine needle. Just a little taller than I was, a young white pine stood, 40 feet from her mother, the daughter of the pine, struggling to grow amid a tangle of other thin trunks. I turned back to the old one. Yes, I said, I will take care of yours. Oops, I'm going to go back to that. I was wrong about those pine cones. I had heard correctly that some pine cones only open in fires, but that's jack pines, if you know. White pines, I paid more close attention later and found that they were growing all along the roads up here. So they open, even not in fires. So my human hubris, thinking the tree could not hear me, and that I must be hallucinating when I thought I heard the tree speak. Actually, what I got from the tree, whether it was, as a Jungian might say, my unconscious talking to me, or the tree itself, or whatever, it was more right than I was. There was a young white pine there. And I finally heard it. We're going to now, though, go to this question. I want you to recall what messages or knowledge you received from a non-human being when you were a child. We're going to take 2 quiet minutes for people to think about that, because there might have been quite a few. For us just to remember, what messages might we have gotten when we were children? You can write them down, you can draw pictures of them. Some of you have paper and crayons, maybe, right near you. But think about many of them, and then we're going to have you put one of them into the chat. The 2 minutes of silence to do this will start right now. That is 2 minutes. Not very long, is it? So you can also keep thinking as people begin to write one of the things they learned as a child from a non-human into the chat. If you can, say who it was that communicated with you to teach you that. Add that. If you're writing or thinking, keep doing that. If you're done, you can read the beautiful things that people are writing. Is there anyone here who is not able to read the chat? Then I can speak it to you more. Please, you can just send me a private message or you can say it. Mhm. Sometimes the messages don't come with words. Thank you. I think Matthew joined us recently. I appreciate your words in there. You can continue, but I'm going to share screen again and tell you your next little task. This tree, by the way, this white pine that I have as a picture is the white pine above my parents' resting place. We have a wild cemetery up here. It's called Birch Lake Cemetery, and it was from the first Anishinaabe and Finnish settlers and the original settlers around this lake. And in the past couple years, my family and I have dug holes and buried our parents' ashes under this white pine. So this is one of our guardian one of my many guardian pines. Now I have to get this so that I can switch to the next screen. Why is it not wanting to go to the next screen? We're going to now take a little more quiet time. This is a group I sense that can understand quiet time. Go walk away if you can from your screen. I'll set a timer for 8 minutes. I think we can, yes, we can use 8 minutes. I want you to go find a nearby non-human neighbor and be with it. A tree if you can, a plant. Those fruit flies, the frogs would be wonderful. The yeast in the bread. If you don't, you can even be with one of your non-human internal residents, like your mitochondria, if you'd like. You can speak a bit of your own truth if you want to, but mostly spend time being present to that other being. And then in the last couple of those 2 minutes, anybody can return to this space as you want to. You can write or draw or make a cairn of stones or whatever it is to honor this time that you've had with that other being. If possible, you can bring that back to our time in 8 minutes. So go for it. I'm starting the timer. I'll stay in the room for anyone who comes back, but you are really welcome to walk away. That was 8 minutes. So if you can hear me, come back. If you're off in a conversation that needs to be continued, of course, you'll stay with it. I love the people who have put into the chat the ways they're breaking my rules. It's always more important to follow your own than to follow those that someone like me gives you. But I would like us to do a couple more things as it fits for you in the time together. If you have something to show us from your conversation time, you could raise your hand and then you'll get a chance to show us. If you can type a bit of your experience into the chat, do that now. And we're going to take, let's see, we got to pay attention to the time. We're only going to take a little bit of time now to share, but I'm going to compile, I'm collecting the chat, and I will be giving you my email my email address, so that you can send me your words even after this session. And then I'm going to be compiling them into a collage from our session, so you can all get back what you and others have said even after this hour is over. But right now, take a bit of time, raise your hand if you have something to show us, type into the chat if you have words you want to share. Galen.
Hello.
Hi, Galen.
So I'm on the second floor. I'm actually wondering if I should shut this fan. I don't know if that was bleeding through or not. So I'm on the second floor and I decided to go and sit out on the back porch. And I noticed the domesticated beehive as part of the garden in the backyard here in the community. And so I sat with the organism that is the beehive, the collective organism. And I was watching some of its little parts go off and disperse and do their job for the organism, finding some nutrients and being part of its metabolism. And I don't have much words to share about that. I was just appreciating the dance and thinking about the dance of life. And this isn't something that I made, but I wanted to share. It happened to be sitting on the counter as I was walking back. And a friend of mine several years ago started teaching me a little bit of macrame. And I still haven't learned yet, but I have this as a model so that I can come back to it. And I wanted to share it because it reminds me, the words that came to mind were out of many, one. And this reminds me that all of life is a woven pattern, and it's difficult to entangle what is individual from collective. And
yeah. Francis.
So I'm going to try to position this so you can see what I made. Can you see this little candle with acorns around it?
Yeah, we can see the edge of it, Francis. Yeah.
I'm not really good at positioning this iPad. Let's see. That might be a little better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We see it.
So I was talking with the tree I mentioned that we greet each other each morning about being in a new city where I'm planning to live for a while. The amazing trees here were a discovery I hadn't planned on. And that one especially, but all around. And they've given me a sense of belonging, especially when I arrived when we were still in lockdown, and it was hard to find human beings to connect with for a while. And yesterday I was out walking, watching how the trees are starting to change. And I collected these hickory nuts and acorns during my walk, and had just brought them home and put them in a bowl. But out of the conversation, I thought maybe this little altar would be an honoring of that gift from these trees that are holding me and helping me discover myself in this new place.
They are. Thank you, Frances. Pamela and Rita and others have put lovely, wonderful contributions in the chat. Matthew.
Hello. Yeah, good morning. So there was a little hand drum here beside my bed. It's morning here and just getting up. And so I played a little shamanic drum for the time. And it was a beautiful journey. And one of the important lessons I'm working on right now, and there was a prompt that said, tell your truth to that inanimate being, right? That non-human, not inanimate, certainly animate.
Yeah.
Certainly animate. Tell the truth. And the truth was, I know my own feelings and need not be overwhelmed by all the many feelings of others. And I believe the extension of that for me is that in order to actually hear the many feelings of others, I first need to know what mine are, so that I have a place from which I can feel. Because, for instance, even just the massive amounts of data we're getting downloaded in this summit, it's overwhelming, you know, tangling with the beast, right? There's a big beast here. And if I allow myself to be totally overwhelmed by all that and don't stay in touch with my own feelings, it'll render me dysfunctional. And so I told the drum that I know my own feelings and need not be overwhelmed by the many feelings of others.
Thank you, Matthew.
Thank you.
That is a perfect segue into the next part I want us to hold in our meditative time this morning. When I was becoming type 1 diabetic, I didn't believe it. I thought I was just psychosomatically freaking out about the earth condition, and that if I could talk myself out of that, I would stop being thirsty. I told my body that it wasn't really thirsty. As a result, I nearly died because I did not go to the ER until the very last minute, where they saved my life very nicely of them. But you're right, Matthew. If we don't pay attention to our own bodies, we are going to not be able to do this work. So here's a meditation I want to offer you. It's called The Voice of the Body, and I will screen share once more so you can think on this. And it is the next page. What, just now, is the nearest body trying to say? Yes, that one, the one that is you. Do you hear it? Will you be still and listen? We're going to take 2 minutes to listen internally to our bodies. I needed to listen to my beta cells that were dying at that time. It's not so easy sometimes for us to listen internally, but listen to what your body might be saying. Some of you are probably really good at this. I've gotten a bit better since I realized that I was not listening at all. Okay, 2 minutes is starting now. That's been a bit more than 2 minutes. If you feel willing to speak out loud what your body said, raise your hand. Or what some leasty part in your body said. Raise your hand and we will hear you. Scott.
First, I just appreciate the time to tune my deep listening in directly into the body, and my body communicated some shakiness around something happened in the house here where I live. So yeah, just listening and honoring.
Thank you, Scott. Francis.
Yes, I too want to appreciate bringing this this exploration back into our living bodies. My body said, get out and embed me in place, commingle my energy with the other living energies and see what happens.
Pretty intelligent. Pretty intelligent body. Galen. If you're speaking, Galen, you're muted.
Whoops, my click didn't work. My body is communicating some sense of need of not being taken care of. And I was noticing, which is obviously connected to that, just noticing how difficult it was to listen because the mind is so loud. And even now, I'm not entirely sure that I'm listening, or if I'm just sharing what the mind is believing that the body might be trying to say. There's a lot of room for questioning there, but I'm feeling strongly that the body is not being taken care of.
These are precious, these bodies. Without each of your bodies, there wouldn't be this transition summit. I want to tell you that I had a dream a few nights ago that I was in this house and all these other people were kind of in the air. And I realized they were all my Zoom companions. That the people I've met from this place by Zoom who are embodied, and if they were not embodied, I would not have met them here in the Zoom space, and we would not be able to do this work together. And I was so grateful for all of the real bodies that are really there, but that show up in my Zoom space as kind of, I don't know, ethereal bodies. All of yours. I'm going to share a screen again. We're about to end because I think it might be important for everybody to have 5 minutes at least to continue listening in your own spaces before there's some other session that happens. Tomorrow morning, I want to point out there's From Burnout to Flourishing. That's another one of these Inner Resilience Network sessions. Every morning at 10 a.m., there is something offered by the Inner Resilience Network. Cultivating Compassion is on Saturday. You might want to do this From Burnout to Flourishing first. Here's my email address. Feel free to send other contributions to me, and I will include them in the collage with the ones that I collect from the chat. To give my own book credit, everything I read was from Watershed. It's the only book I think I'll ever write, because I don't think we humans need to fill the world with our words. At least this human doesn't. So they're just a few. But if you want to go back to any, it's got a lot of meditations, kind of like this, threaded in it. And you can find it from my website. Here, I'll put I'm going to stop sharing. And I will write that email address into the chat so that you can send me something else. You can copy that easily and send it if you want to. Yes, we're going to go so that you can continue listening to whatever or speaking. Anything, anybody, anything that needs to be said out loud to this group before we go. It's important to say it and not let it stew inside you. Theo.
Just want to thank you for a nice session. It's really beautiful to toss people back on their own listening. Really good. I want to say on behalf of the national organizers, if you like this, continue to come play with Transition US. Stay connected. We're trying to rebuild the movement, and you're part of the people we want to continue working with. So stay involved, right? It's been a great sessions. Finally, in terms of being in your body, Sri Aurobindo and the yoga tradition says we got to wake up the flesh, right? Be in our bodies. Don't zone out, part of the revolution is our bodies being awake. So you can keep the toxic waste off your forehead. That's great. It's Kali Yuga out there, but hopefully we can turn the world around if we all keep working and loving the Mother Earth. So praise God, and thank you,
Theo. Thanks to everyone. Anyone else? Okay, blessings on each day. Okay. I'll stay here for a little bit in case you still have a message you want to type in the chat, but you can also send it to my email.